How America's enemies weaponize anti-war sentiment. Nobody likes war. If you ask Americans whether they want another conflict overseas, the answer is almost always no. We want peace. We want prosperity. We want our sons and daughters at home. And that's exactly why America's adversaries have learned to exploit that instinct. For decades, rival powers have discovered something powerful. If they can convince Americans that every display of strength is reckless, every military deployment is imperialism, and every defense commitment is a quote-unquote forever war, they can expand their own influence without firing a shot. The greatest weapon against American power may not be a missile, tank, or a warship. It may not be the grandest fighter jet or the most impressive aircraft carrier. It may be the belief that America should stop acting like a superpower altogether. Today, we're going to explore how anti-war narratives have been used by America's rivals, American political opposition, how America's allies sometimes benefit from American protection while criticizing it, and why the debate between war and defense may be one of the most important geopolitical questions of America and of the 21st century. Geopolitical questions of America and of the 21st century. Chapter 1. The Superpowers Dilemma. The United States faces a problem no other nation or empire in history has faced. Since the end of World War II, America has helped secure global trade routes, protected allies across Europe and Asia, deterred major wars between great powers, and maintained a military presence on nearly every continent. Yet, Americans remain, as they do then and today, deeply uncomfortable with the idea of being an empire. Unlike the empires of old, America doesn't see itself as a conquering territory for profit. Instead, it views its military power as a defensive shield that protects allies, commerce, and international stability. For example, when the United States went into Iraq for the quote-unquote oil, it was more to stabilize international energy markets rather than seize oil for itself. Critics often describe this as interventionism. Supporters call it deterrence. But America's rivals understand something important. If they can convince Americans that every act of deterrence is actually aggression, then America may voluntarily retreat from the world stage militarily. And that's where the anti-war narrative becomes strategically useful. Chapter 2. The adversaries and rivals who benefit. Consider the situation China finds itself. For decades, Beijing has expanded its own military power, built artificial islands in disputed waters, increased pressure on neighbors, and sought greater influence throughout Asia. At the same time, Chinese state media frequently portrays American military presence in the Pacific as provocative and destabilizing. The message is simple. America is the problem. American alliances are the problem. American bases are the problem. The goal isn't necessarily to convince the Chinese public. It's to convince us Americans that defending our position and the position of our allies in Asia isn't worth the effort. If America withdraws, in that scenario, China gains influence without having to have fired a single bullet for it. The same pattern appears with North Korea. For years, Pyongyang has threatened its neighbors, conducted missile tests, and expanded its nuclear arsenal. Yet every American effort to strengthen deterrence in the region is often portrayed by North Korean propaganda as aggressive militarism. And the thing is that many Americans would agree. The strategy is obvious. Make American defense appear offensive. Make American restraint appear virtuous. Then continue building military capabilities while Washington and Americans debate whether it should remain involved at all. Lately, Iran uses a similar playbook. Iranian leaders regularly denounce American military presence in the Middle East while simultaneously supporting proxy groups throughout the region for its benefit. Every American withdrawal creates opportunities for Tehran's influence to expand, which is why many of America's allies in the region insist and on continuing to maintain American military presence despite the domestic backlash it creates. Every reduction in deterrence creates a new room for regional coercion. In each case, America's rivals benefit when Americans become convinced that maintaining global commitments is inherently wrong. Chapter 3: The Free Rider Problem. But America's competitors aren't the only ones benefiting. Some of America's allies have also become comfortable relying on American power while criticizing it. For decades, the United States has spent enormous sums maintaining military forces capable of defending not only itself but much of the democratic world. Many allied nations reduced their own military spending after the Cold War, confident that the United States will remain the ultimate security guarantor. Did you know that Canada used to have aircraft carriers? This creates a strong contradiction. Some countries criticize American military spending, yet they also depend upon it. Some criticize American global leadership, yet they rely upon American naval power to keep trade flowing. Some oppose American interventions, yet they expect Washington to respond when a crisis threatens their security. The reality is that security guarantees are expensive. Deterrence is expensive. Maintaining global stability is expensive. And for decades, America has carried a disproportionate share of that burden, as have the American people. Chapter 4: Why Narratives Matter. The most successful strategy against a superpower isn't always military. Sometimes it's psychological. If America's enemies can convince Americans that every overseas commitment is pointless, every alliance is a burden, and every display of strength is warmongering, then America may begin dismantling its own position. History offers plenty of examples. The withdrawal from Afghanistan was widely supported because Americans were exhausted after 20 years of war. But America's rivals also studied the lesson. They learned that patience can be a weapon, which is what we might be seeing in Iran. If you can outlast American political will, eventually the pressure may disappear. This doesn't mean every military intervention is wise, however. Far from it. The United States, like any nation, has made mistakes. Again, every great power has. The question isn't whether America should use force everywhere. The question is whether abandoning leadership creates a safer world, or simply a world where America's adversaries face fewer obstacles. Which leads us to this very crucial question for the 21st century. Chapter 5: What happens if America steps back? Imagine a world where America decides the anti-war critics are completely correct. Bases are closed, alliances are reduced, military commitments shrink dramatically. Who fills the vacuum? China? Iran? Turkey? North Korea? Russia? History suggests that power vacuums rarely remain empty. Someone always moves in. The uncomfortable truth is that deterrence often prevents wars that never makes headlines. The carrier strike group that discourages aggression doesn't generate news. The alliance that prevents an invasion doesn't create dramatic footage. The military presence that keeps a rival from acting never produces a visible victory. Success looks like nothing happened. And because nothing happened, many people assume the military presence wasn't necessary. And a great problem today is that many people assume that what we are living through today is what is normal. It is not normal. What happens when regional powers begin filling the vacuums and there is conflict between regional powers over contested areas? Will there be more wars or less? Conclusion: Americans' rivals understand something many Americans forget. Power abandoned is power transferred. The debate shouldn't be between war and peace. It should be between deterrence and vulnerability, and in which situation leads to more war. Between maintaining a position of strength and hoping others will act responsibly in its absence. Iran understands this. All the neighbors of Iran understand this. North Korea understands this, as does South Korea. Why do you think American bases are placed right on the border between North Korea and South Korea, and why do you think South Korea likes it that way? And sometimes even America's allies understand it. The real question is whether Americans understand it too. Because history suggests that whenever a superpower retreats, The world doesn't become less competitive. It simply becomes more competitive and opportunistic for everyone else. And usually, as we have seen in the past with World War I and World War II, not in America's favor. If you enjoyed this analysis, subscribe for more deep dives into geopolitics, grand strategy, and the forces shaping the future of American power. And let me know in the comments, do you agree? Do you disagree? Does America's military presence prevent conflict, or does it create it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you, and that is all for now. Have a great day.